Hey everyone, welcome to my second video blog. My name's Jonah Horn and I will be summarizing an article today. That article specifically is by Lids et al. Um, and it's done in 2003. It's titled What Infants Know About Syntax But Couldn't Have Learned. Experimental Evidence for Syntactic Structure at 18 Months. And so this is done by Lids, Waxman, and Friedman. Once again in 2003. And so they start off the article. I thought I'd just make this pretty organized article next to PowerPoint. Um, so they start off by discussing and giving a broad overview of this generative linguistics theory that basically is found on the hypothesis that grammar can't be acquired just solely off of analyzing input, but rather it also includes this innateness that's found within the learner. And so recently there have been some challenges, or I guess recent in this article. So back in 2002-ish, in the early 2000s, there have been some challenges to this hypothesis that have gained some pretty good attention, that essentially claim that an analysis of input is actually sufficient enough to explain grammatical acquisition. So this is probably most likely the research, or the reason for this research, and therefore their question that's brought up from all this is, do inputs know that the word one is anaphoric to the phrasal category N apostrophe, that, and thus that the NP, the noun phrase, has a hierarchical structure. And so in layman's terms, do 18-month-old babies show evidence for innate knowledge of syntactic structure? So throughout the intro, I thought I'd just basically go over these couple things they address. So I found this paragraph right here to be pretty helpful. It basically says that the paper is going to address the challenges to the nativist perspective, which once again, nativism is this theory of innateness. So it's going to address challenges to the nativist perspective, that being the poverty of the stimulus argument, which is recently taken, or I guess recent in early 2000s, taken the center stage, taken all eyes on itself. And so first, the article is going to articulate the logic using noun phrases as a case point. Then it basically will analyze input. It analyzes the input to show that learning the correct grammar isn't part of the learning experience. And so it basically says that despite the poverty of the support in the environment, children and adults are basically similar, or have the similarity of knowledge in noun phrase. And so you would assume that with this in mind, that if that were the case, right here it talks about the two different hypotheses, flat structure and nested. And nested is something that adults are going to go off of, this nested structure. So that essentially would say that if noun phrases, or what would it be? If they said that one is anaphoric to this phrasal category and apostrophe, they're going to show that they're basically following this nested structure hypothesis. So before I go into their hypothesis, which I know I should, I want to go over the methods, because I find it might be a little bit easier to go over it that way. So they give this intro and a little background about it, and they then talk about their experiment. What they're going to do is they turn to the acquisition question, and they basically want to know, does one do infants know whether one is anaphoric to the phrasal category N, and thus the NP, the noun phrase, has a hierarchical structure, or not. And so they predicted that they do. They predict that infants do, in fact, interpret one as anaphoric to the phrasal category N. And so this is going to show evidence for innateness. And I'll come back to this hypothesis. I thought I was going to go over methods first. Getting a little all over the place, but stay organized. So the participants in this study, they tested 24 English-speaking children. 12 of them were female, 12 of them were male. And these were between the ages of 16 months, 23 days, and 18 months, 15 days. So that would give a mean of about 18 months, 3 days. So they selected 18-month-old babies because it's at this age that infants start to produce utterances with more than one word, an achievement that is generally taken as clear evidence of the onset of syntactic development. So that's why they chose who they chose. A little bit about the materials, not too much. The auditory stimuli that they used consisted of sentences and questions that were recorded in a soundproof recording chamber, and they saved that in a digitized format, and that's what the infants heard during the testing. The auditory stimuli were recorded by the last author in a friendly voice to infants, so wouldn't scare them away, like a creepy clown voice would. And so the objects that they used were bottles, cars, shoes, bears. They were chosen because their names are generally recognizable to infants at around 13 months. So at this age, they should generally have an idea of what these are and not be confused by the different names. I'm running out of time. So, and then the visual stimuli were constructed using a computer drawing program. And they were bright and colorful and large, so it attracts the infant, so it gains their attention. And so this procedure, it was basically the parents and children are escorted into the testing room. Infants sit on a booster seat, and the parents, I believe, are blind, so they have a visor that makes it so they can't see where their infants are looking. And so each infant participated in 4 trials with 2 phases each. And so there's a familiarization phase and a testing phase. And so during the familiarization phase, they had an image of one object, so it was a yellow bottle, and it was presented 3 times, let's say, and it was appearing in alternating fashion on the left or right side of the monitor. And so each presentation was accompanied by that friendly voice, who would say, look, a yellow bottle. So during the testing phase, 2 objects appeared simultaneously on opposite sides of the TV, and it was either a yellow bottle and a blue bottle. And both objects were from the same category, right? They're both bottles, but only one of them was the same color. Hence, yellow and blue bottles. And so infants were randomly assigned to either the control group or the test group. So the control condition, they heard this neutral phase. Now look, what do you see now? Which, if you notice, doesn't include the word one, the anaphoric condition. So the anaphoric condition, subjects who were chose in that condition heard the phrase containing the expression one, and it says, now look, do you see another one? So on each of the 4 trials, the test lasted about 8 seconds, and the entire experiment was about a little less than 4 minutes. So what they found, I kind of already went over predictions, and we're wrapping up now. So basically, they had predicted that they will interpret one as anaphoric to the phrasal category N, and therefore they are using this nested structure showing evidence of innateness. And so their results showed that by 18 months of age, infants did in fact interpret one as anaphoric to the category N, and thus represented NP with a nested structure, the noun phrase with a nested structure, therefore supporting prediction. So as you can see, this graph here, I believe also, I don't know where I saw it, but I did see that it had very good statistical validity. No, whatever, I'm out of time. But, so I thought that was cool, just tying in something I learned last semester. But as you can see here, the graph, the anaphoric condition, the control does not show. The control shows, as they predicted, that the children would look at the novel item rather than the familiar item, more so when there wasn't a difference between looking preference or head turning preference, versus in the anaphoric condition, as they suggested, that the kids would turn their heads towards the familiar one when the anaphoric expression 1 was used. So that is it. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. And sorry I keep going over the timeline, but I hope you enjoyed, and I hope it was crystal clear.